All right, here we go. Economic expansion and change. I'm going to be enthusiastic in this one. I got a great class here. A couple weirdos, but that's okay. Changes. Shh. In agriculture, transform Europe. First thing that happens in the Middle Ages to help food production increase. Y'all with me? Yeah. Woo! First thing, global warming. Yep, global warming can be a good thing. It really can. Here we go. In about the year 800 to 1300, Europe is starting to slowly warm up, which means, it's going to be a better growing season. No, it's not from cars. It's not the smog from cars. There was no cars back then. Quit asking me questions in the middle of my video that I'm recording. All right. Anyway. This global warming leads to a longer growing season. Okay, now Northern Europe, which has been pretty much isolated because of the weather, can start to grow food. Woo! That probably hurt your ears. All right, more changes. Second thing that is the big change in agriculture is the horse, or horses, as it says right here. Horses are a key ingredient in this increase in food production. At first, oxen were used for plowing for a very long time, as you can see in the picture in the top right. Lots of oxen were used. Then, I'll just say the ox is a heck of a lot cheaper than the horse because ox can pretty much eat anything that it wants. And it was a lot cheaper for the farmer to have an ox and instead of a horse for his plowing. All right, you got to understand the diva horses needed the good stuff. They wanted to always eat the good stuff. That's what horses are. Many of y'all know what horses do. If you have horses, they are divas. Kind of like a lot of these people in here, divas. All right. Second biggest problem was a harness. If you look at the ox harness up here, you can tell it's an ox bow. And if you look at the horse harness down here, it's a special type of harness. Second biggest problem was the cost of growing good grain for the horse. I mean, it was too expensive for the farmer to even try to grow good grain. Say that a bunch of times. Grow good grain, grow good grain, grow good grain. All right. Right here, this is the original harness derived from the Roman design many years ago. And because of the placement of the top strap and the pull lines, where you see those right there, the pull lines at the top, the harness had the unfortunate habit of choking the horse if it pulled too hard. Don't choke your horse, people. All right. Next generation harness was a little better. It's called the breast harness. Yeah, I knew somebody would do that. Goofballs back there. Was better because it's still the breast strap could still ride up and choke the horse. Yes, Miss Hillier, how can I help you?
What are you doing talking?
I'm recording my video.
Oh, I'm so glad I'm part of it.
Yes, you are. Thank you.
Did you get this?
No, not yet.
Okay.
All right. Have a great day. Okay. They're probably doing something like that. Oh, messed up on the arrows there, but there they are right now. So along comes the horse collar, which is probably the biggest influences in medieval times. It really is. It's one of the greatest inventions of this time frame. All right. It fits around the horse's head with the pull lines at the side. This puts the pulling pressure on the shoulders and the breast of the horse and off its neck. So now the horse can be used as good farm equipment. You also got to understand now that this is happening that they can start to grow better grain for the horses because now they can, start to afford it, or they need to afford it. All right, other changes. The third change, the 3-field system. As you look right here, there's 3 fields right here. Uno, dos, tres. Uno, dos, tres. So those things, here, let me go over it. All right. Used to be that there were only 2 fields in original farming. You would farm one and leave the other fallow to keep the soil healthy. And then some smart farmer, probably named Joe, said, hey, let's use 3 fields. And they came up with the 3-field system. One field had a winter crop, which was usually wheat, which would also help grow, they could use it to feed the horses. Second field had spring crops, oats, peas, other legumes, which were high in protein, which helped increase the populations of people. Third field was left fallow so that the soil could replenish and, get all the nutrients back into it. Woo! Nutrients. All right. Hope I'm being enthusiastic enough. Here are some pictures of three-field systems and some of the harnesses that developed, the horse harness or horse collar, and just some other things, just to show all the different things that were happening within the medieval time period. All right. Another thing that started to develop was craft workers. Craft workers start to make goods that are traded all over Europe. If you remember, Europe is kind of isolated because the Byzantines are in the east and Rome fell, and this is where Europe is now. Going to irritate you here real quick. Drank my coffee. I got people looking at me, and I really don't care. All right. So, fairs. They started to have fairs where they held games like, jousting, all kinds of things. People started to gather. People started to mingle and meet and start to talk about all the different things that they are witnessing over there in the East, especially. Merchants start selling goods in its huge areas of congregating. They sell cloth, food, leather, etc. And you got to remember where they're getting all these things. A lot of them are getting from the Eastern empires or the Byzantine empires where they're still trading. Byzantines are still trading in the East. So a lot of these goods are finally starting to trickle back into Europe. All right, let's talk about guilds. Guilds are a group that practices the same craft, such as blacksmiths, bakers, tailors, coppersmiths, all those different types of guys, etc. All right, they control whatever market they were in. So blacksmiths control the market of that town. It's usually with towns. They set the prices, they set what they could sell, all those different things. So each group formed a guild. You could argue that it's the beginning of union labor. All right, if you were not in the tailor guild, you couldn't sell clothes or you couldn't make clothes if you weren't a tailor guild. It was a very difficult process to go through. Usually you started at the age of 7, started learning how to do all these different things, blacksmiths, whatever it might be. You were young, and then you moved on into, to eventually become a blacksmith. The advantages of a guild is that it creates standards, all right? It creates a standard for its craft. People had certain beliefs on how they should make things, so it just kept standardized things. You wouldn't get different things. Now you may get different, goods and items through different towns, but it would be a standard item. Quality control is another huge thing. And if you weren't good enough, you weren't going to be able to, sell everything that you could in the town. Another thing, more trade means the need for more cash. Okay, people start to borrow money, and the reason why they start to borrow money is because it takes money to make money. They have to buy the items to make the things, all these different things. So economics are starting to happen slowly but surely, trickle out into a global economy again. The Catholic Church does not allow the charging of interest on loans, okay? So people could not go to Catholic, officials or anything like that to get money, to borrow money. So there's only one group that they could go to, the Jewish bankers, okay? So they were able to loan money. And ironically, all the stereotypical things that you hear of the Jewish community started because of the Catholic Church. I mean, Jewish people were allowed to, loan money. And once again, trade is a huge thing. People are wanting to go get these goods over in the East. They're wanting to finance these trips. They're wanting to go get these goods and bring them back to Europe. So it takes a lot of money to go get these things. All this leads to the beginning of middle-class people. Finally, you're starting to develop into a middle-class, wealthy people, wealthy merchants. They're able to get, into a higher upper echelon of people. They weren't necessarily kings. They weren't necessarily lords, but they were wealthy individuals. All right, population. Western Europe is growing. Nobody looked at me at that. All right. Europe's population went from about 30 million to 42 million in 150 years. Why? Because of food production, trade, travel, especially food. Stronger foods give stronger populations. People live longer. So all these things, populations start to increase. People are tired of living on the medieval manners, so they start to develop into moving into the cities. All right, trade increases. Towns also become important trade centers and production centers. Towns and cities weren't pretty. I mean, that picture right there is pretty, but they weren't pretty back then. They were tightly packed and smelly. Refuse, meaning trash, including human waste, were just tossed into the streets, usually out the window. Yes, all that stuff was tossed out the window. People didn't bathe, and houses were fire traps. Ironically, Rome had all the cleanliness. It may not have been an ideal thing to go to the bathroom right next to your neighbor, but at least Rome was clean. Populations again, peasants flood to towns and understand that peasants on the manor or in the medieval, manor could move to towns, and if they stayed there, they could gain their freedoms. Now, that was very ideal. So people are flooding to these towns to get away from feudalism. All right? So wealthy start to govern themselves. The wealthy in these towns start to govern themselves. They go through a lot of, difficulties with the feudal lords. Eventually, the feudal lords lose out, and wealthy people are allowed to start to govern themselves. They don't have to deal with any of the feudalism going on. So towns and all these other things help to end feudalism. You got population growth, you got food production, you got all these different things starting to help end feudalism and trade. Trade and wealthy start to gain interest in learning. I'm sorry, the trade, that's kind of messed up, but the trade and people gaining wealth start to help people wanting to learn more. All right, so it leads to the start of universities. Even the church starts to, create universities. I think one of the first ones was like 1200. Writing in a vernacular also happens, or the local language. So no longer is everything written in Latin in Europe. So if you're French, you're going to get a French Bible. So people are going to start to learn more in a local language where they don't have to learn Latin. They can start to learn their own languages. Crusades also lead to a spark of learning and trade, and we'll get to the Crusades in the next video. Have a wonderful day.